Hey, coaches, this is Coach Kaz with Train the Complete Athlete. And I want to talk to you about two very important topics today. One is about setting boundaries, and the other one is about time management. And you would probably wonder, what does one thing have to do with the other? But so many of the boundaries that we blow through are our time boundaries. And I was probably the guiltiest party of this as a coach because I just was such a mama hen, and I always wanted to prove that I was good at my job. I was a very young head coach. I was a 24-year-old head coach at Concordia, and the closest person to me in age was 12 years older. And to be honest, he was a super successful coach. So I always felt like I was having to prove things. So I think I definitely turned into a workaholic because I was trying to prove something. So now when I take a look back, I would do things very differently. I would manage my time very differently, and I would set a lot more boundaries early on. So being a young coach, it's very careful to set boundaries firm with your student athletes, because I never wanted them to look at me as one of their teammates. One of the benefits is that I was married, and so there was definitely that separation. I never went and did social events with kids, like all the nightmares that we hear about coaches. You don't go to parties, those type of thing. But I still was very involved in their lives. I wanted to know about who they were as student athletes. I wanted to have that connection. I wanted to support them to the best of my ability. But in the long haul, I was doing too much for them, which probably about halfway through my career, I was like, wow, I'm really enabling them. And that was not a good thing for me, for them, or my program. And I remember sitting at a game. We were actually playing Bushnell, and we were not playing very well. And I just sat there and thought, oh my gosh, why don't they just listen to me? And then I chuckled to myself and I go, you really think 20-year-old girls are going to do everything you say? And the moment I accepted that reality and told myself, you have got to hand this over to them, I was a much happier coach. My team was more successful. And just overall, things were so much better because I wasn't trying to control the outcome of everything. I used to believe if I controlled everything and told them exactly what to do, we would be successful, which is a total myth. That's not true. And so I know for me, letting go and saying, hey, I will show you how to do it, but I'm not going to do it for you, was a big game changer for everybody in my program. And I work with so many parents and either raising kids or coaching kids, and I work with coaches. It's the exact same with parenting. You see these helicopter parents and they want to control everything for a positive outcome. It actually is leading to major problems in their kids. I always say that's kind of leading to the next generation of narcissists, because they've always been able to have somebody taking care of them instead of them building the confidence of doing it on their own. And we ask why kids aren't that confident now. Is because we do everything for them, or their phone does everything for them. They don't have to struggle. They don't have to overcome things. And that's really where building confidence is from. So it is okay. No, it's not okay. It's great to be engaged in your student athletes' lives. I wanted to know what was going on, not for gossip's sake, but I wanted to know. So if I saw them off that day, I might go, hey, kiddo, what's going on? Is something happening? When their parents go through a divorce or they're going through these hard things with their roommate, I wanted them to feel safe enough to come to a member of our staff. Because if we didn't know the things that were going on, how are we going to help them? For them to have a great experience and learn the skills they need to, but let's be honest, also to perform, right? If I didn't know those things, I was probably going to coach them in a way that was not going to get the best out of them. And I also wasn't setting them up for success after they graduated. And that was a huge part of my success, at least what I valued as success. I mean, I win, but I also think that I was always meant to finish second place. But I know I was really put into being a coach to help build young adults. And that's really more my gift, more than the X's and O's. And so that was really important. I didn't want them to be keeping things from us. And that's a reason I always stayed really calm when they came to me. Now, there were things that they came to me that I just wanted to say, are you freaking kidding me? Absolutely. But I also had to contain my stuff and set a limit for my emotions, because they were not my children. And I had kids come to me with life-changing things. And they always said, Kaz, I can't believe you're so calm. And I go, you have your parents to freak out, right? But I also knew that I couldn't go in and rescue them. I wasn't going to rescue them. They had to make some big decisions for themselves. Now, was I going to guide them and help them and put all the information in front of them? Absolutely, 100%. I was there for the long haul, but I didn't make the choice for them. They had to do that for themselves. And that was really helpful in setting that boundary for them so they weren't always looking to be bailed out by me. Now, did I have situations that I had to literally step in and bail a kid out? Yep. And that was basic safety. I had a kid that was assaulted as a child, that assaulted her, got out of jail, and assaulted two other people, and knew where my athlete lived. So we literally got approval from the NAIA to house her with me, and that was just pure safety. So yes, there are always exceptions, but those are few and far between. And I know when I think about the enabling part, I am a fixer. I like to serve, and you put those two things together, and it leads to the levels of compassion fatigue that are absolutely insane. And that's the thing is coaches are burning out at such a high level just for the madness that is college sports, but just the emotional drain it takes trying to connect. And that alone leads us to walking out the door. But I also knew that if I was always the one that was fixing the problems, that was enabling them to not take ownership. And that is not what we want for our student athletes. So that boundary is probably just as much for them as it is for you. Now, I know I had a young family when I first started. Well, actually, I didn't have a young family until later on, but I worked a lot. And I was trying to build a program, and I had 8 different hats at Concordia, which most small colleges do. And I knew I needed to change my life when my daughter drew a family picture of us. And there was 4 of us, and I was in bed with my laptop. And part of you like, well, the laptop makes sense. What about being in bed? So I've had chronic pain because of injury my whole life, or not my whole life, my whole adult life. And I spent so much time in bed working because my body was so worn down and in pain from coaching, being on buses, sleeping in hotels. And so when I was home, my temper was shorter. I wasn't very present with my kids or my husband. And I know when I left coaching, they were sad, but they were sad for about, I don't know, a couple of weeks. They were missing the girls. But when I said I would take another coaching job, they all started screaming, no. It was high school. I wasn't going back to it. But I wasn't very good at setting work boundaries. I was also a compliance officer. I remember doing compliance work when I was on a vacation in New York City at 2 a.m. And my husband never really understood why I would be willing to do that. Now, we all know as compliance officers, compliance is compliance and it's very timely, but I was willing to not set any boundary for myself when it came to work. And I think for me, that led me to retiring earlier from coaching than I had planned. So it's important to set those boundaries for your families. I know, guys, this thing is probably the worst thing when it comes to setting boundaries. People can grab us at all times. I mean, I got phone calls from crisis teams at 11:30 at night, running down to hospitals and all those things. So when we can set boundaries, we need to. So when it's, you've done game management for 3 days in a row, and your sister-in-law comes and says, we're leaving go to your mother's, you go. And yes, that happened to me. My sister-in-law that was our athletic trainer, and she literally pulled me off scaffolding and said, we're going. And I would have never set that boundary for myself, and I'm glad she did. Even when I left coaching, I knew it was time to make a switch for my family, for me. I knew that my passion for softball was dying out, and I knew that I wanted to best support student athletes in the capacity I'm doing. And to be honest, my boss set me a boundary, and well, that's a whole other long story, but I am grateful that my boss said you're done instead of me, because I don't think I would have ever said it's time to walk away, because my loyalty would have never led me to making the best decision for myself. And that is really, really important. The other thing, when we think about setting boundaries, we're going to go kind of more onto the everyday thing is we need to know when we do set limits for our student athletes. And sometimes we are the worst ones at teaching them how. I know for me, one of the best coaches I worked with is a guy named Grant Landy, and coaches at Division II. And the reason I learned so much from him is he was the master of using rest as part of training. We always think that the more you grind, the better you're going to be. That we all know that that's not true now. And so I watched this guy, not have practice or take these days off. And I was always like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you got to be grinding it out. Well, he kept winning. And so I started paying attention to those days off and thinking, what does he know that I don't? And what he knew is he needed to set limits so his kids could recover or they could do schoolwork. They always were in the Final Four. They were always top academically. I think he was looked upon as lazy, but really he knew when to rest his kids. And I see that with me now. I'm making better decisions for my student athletes to recover, and not just mentally recover, but physically recover. And I see programs that do the opposite. And the more the grind, the more successful they think you're going to be. It's not playing out anymore. It's not. And it's actually being so harmful to our student athletes when it comes to their physical and mental well-being. They are running into burnout. We all think it's depression, but most of it is burnout. And it's because they are training all the time. They're watching film all the time. I'm grateful I played in an era that film was just coming on. So I didn't spend hours and hours watching film, because I was able to go home and go to sleep, do my homework, do those type of things. Now the hours are just getting to be more and more and more. And they could even just be on a bus. And what does coach do? Oh, hey, watch this video. Dude, that wasn't going on. We were still watching VHS when I was playing. And so we need to set limits for our kids and also keep perspective. We treat them so often like they are just workhorses, but they're still kids. Our generation is still kids coming out of COVID. They're developmentally stunted, and they don't have a lot of the skills that they needed to have because they're being raised by helicopter parents, and we locked them away for 2 years. So we need to understand that they have probably smaller limits than we once did. And that doesn't mean they're weak. They're just a different generation. And we need to figure that out and work around that. And the coaches, honestly, that are figuring that out are being more successful. It's as simple as that. And one of the questions I get asked a lot is, well, what do I do when a kid needs a mental health day? Have you ever thought about just giving days off? You don't have to call them mental health days, just days off. I know right now, currently, I'm actually, I only have about 4 weeks left, and I'm coaching high school, but I know I have 4 weeks left, and I'm treating it just like my college season. If I had 4 weeks left, we're going to start taking time off, or we're going to have shorter practices. Why? Because my kids' bodies are beat up. I need them to have as much as they can when we go into postseason. So we start minimizing stuff. Are we stopping practice? No. Is our intensity less? No. But I want to be able to maintain their mental wellness, their stress levels, and their physical levels as we go deeper into postseason. My mentality is always like, get our pitcher off the field as soon as we can, because we want them to be as fresh as they can be. So sometimes we have to acknowledge, are we not setting boundaries of how much they can work out? And we always had that 1 or 2 kids that loves to live in the gym. I would literally say if they were in the gym, they would get in trouble. And those are on some Mondays we had to, because I had kids that were like addicted to working out, and I didn't want stress fractures happening. I've had to do that with pitchers as well. So setting those boundaries. The other thing too is also kids will try to invade the social boundary because, oh my gosh, I was so close to my summer ball coach. I also had a kid say, do you not like parents? I said, no, parents are fine. She goes, well, you never talk to the parents. And I said, well, because my job is to work with you. I will build a relationship with your parents, but they're not part of the agenda. And she did understand that, right? But you can be close to your players, but they can't, as I say, be in your homes all the time. They can't hang out on weekends. You have to be realistic about what limits you need to set. And those are important, to set those boundaries and be clear with your student athletes about setting them and understanding why you are setting them. Okay. And this comes to even what we were talking about, time management. Now, I'm not going to go deep into what I do with student athletes about managing every single day, but I was the office that everybody hung out in. I had the couches and the snacks. And at one time I had a baby and a puppy. And I mean, I freaking was like the life living in my office. So people were in my office all the time. And at some points I had to say, get out. And the reason is not because I would love to spend all day long hanging out with my student athletes. That would be the ultimate life. But I needed to get work done. And to be honest, so did they. So I needed them to understand that, hey, I have to make these things that are priorities, and so do you. So I had to be the model, even though I would goof off the whole time. I mean, yeah, there are days that I would love to talk about absolute garbage and not do anything serious at practice, but I have to be the one that says, no, we are trying to accomplish this, and this is what we're going to do. Okay. So with boundaries, we need to look about how they serve us and how they serve our student athletes. And the social boundaries, we need to know we are their mentors. We are the third parent. We are not their friends. And if we can follow that guideline, that's going to take us very far. The other key takeaway is the grind is not always better. Sometimes we need to set boundaries of how much they are training and working out, sometimes to keep them from hurting themselves. this can also mean an extra day off here and there. And you probably are going to see less mental health days by kids at random times, right? Because you can control when the days are off, not just on a whim when you really need them to be at practice. And also set boundaries for how much you work. I know that's hilarious, but there are going to be days that you think, I've got to do this, when really, do you really? I always joke with administrators, say, hey, just take a day off. And they always kind of frown at me. And I said, you need to look at the long picture, or the long game. If I take off today, am I going to be better for my people tomorrow? It's kind of that whole thing of, I need to put my oxygen mask on before the person next to me. If I am totally worn out, do I need to get a recovery day to be the best leader I can for my student athletes and my children and my spouse? I'm guessing if it was the difference between one practice that you take off or grinding, how much that one day could possibly totally change how you are physically and mentally, and your team. So don't be afraid to set that boundary of, enough is enough. We need the day. Or it could be, man, we are slacking like nobody's business. We got to step it up. Take a step back and look at the big picture. Sometimes our emotions or our desire to win get us so tunnel vision, and that usually doesn't set us up for the best success in the long haul. Don't always think short game. Sometimes we got to think a season at a time.